Snow fell in fat, lazy flakes, catching the amber glow of distant streetlights. The moon hung low and swollen behind a veil of clouds, casting just enough light to make the abandoned playground equipment gleam with frost. Wind whistled through the skeletal trees, their naked branches scratching against each other like bony fingers. The temperature had plummeted hours ago, turning breath into ghostly puffs that disappeared into the night. In the shadow of a crumbling apartment building, a small cardboard box shifted. The flap opened slightly, revealing two tiny figures huddled together beneath a thin, ragged blanket. Tessa's small fingers clutched the edge of the box, her knuckles white with cold. The world loomed impossibly large around her, the buildings like mountains, the street lamps like distant suns, too far to offer warmth. "Kai cold," whispered her sister, pressing closer. Kaia's voice trembled, her teeth chattering between words. "Tummy hurts." Tessa nodded, feeling the hollow ache in her own stomach. 3 days since Mama had gone to sleep and wouldn't wake up. 3 days of waiting in their apartment until the heat stopped working. 3 days until the hunger drove them outside into the big, scary world. The snow crunched beneath Tessa's worn shoes as she crawled from the box, pulling her sister with her. The icy air bit at her cheeks, making her eyes water. Everything smelled sharp and clean, but underneath lurked the city's scent, exhaust fumes, garbage, and something metallic that reminded her of when Mama had coughed into her handkerchief. "Did we find food?" Tessa said, her voice small against the vastness of the night. Her red mittens, once bright, now dirty and fraying at the edges, felt damp against her skin. She wiggled her toes inside her boots, trying to bring feeling back to them. The streetlight above cast long, stretching shadows that made monsters on the snow. Kaia's hand found hers, warm despite everything. Her sister's face, so like looking in a mirror, was pinched with hunger and fear. Her dark curls peeked out from beneath a knitted cap that was too big, slipping down to cover her eyebrows. A smudge of dirt marked her cheek, and Tessa reached up with her mitten to rub it away, leaving a wet streak instead. "Mama said no go out," Kaia whispered, her bottom lip quivering. "Mama said monsters." Tessa squeezed her sister's hand. The wind picked up, sending a shiver through her thin jacket. The buildings around them seemed to lean in, watching. Windows like dark eyes stared down at the tiny figures trudging through the snow. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, making both girls flinch and huddle closer together. "Mama's sleeping," Tessa said, the words catching in her throat. "We find help. Find food." She tugged her sister forward, each step sinking into the fresh snow with a soft crunch. The twins wandered through streets that grew narrower and darker, the modern buildings giving way to older structures with stone facades and wrought iron fences. Streetlights became scarcer, casting pools of golden light with vast stretches of darkness between them. The snow fell heavier now, collecting on their shoulders and melting against their necks, sending icy trickles down their spines. Tessa's legs ached with each step. Her stomach twisted with hunger, a gnawing pain that made her dizzy. She focused on the crunch of snow beneath her feet, the weight of Kaia's hand in hers, the cloud of breath that appeared and vanished with each exhale. A rat scurried across their path, disappearing into a drain, and Kaia whimpered. "It's okay," Tessa murmured, though her heart hammered in her chest. "Just a mousie." "Big mousie," Kaia said, her voice small and frightened. "Tessa, I scared." "Me too," Tessa admitted, squeezing her sister's fingers. "But we stay together, always together." They paused beneath a streetlight, its bulb flickering erratically, casting strange, jumping shadows. Tessa tilted her head back, watching the snowflakes swirl in the light like tiny dancers. One landed on her eyelash, then melted, rolling down her cheek like a tear. "Look," Kaia suddenly whispered, pointing ahead. Big castle! Through the curtain of falling snow, a towering structure loomed at the end of the street. Unlike the buildings around it, this one stretched impossibly high, its spires disappearing into the low clouds. Gargoyles perched along its edges, their stone faces watching the street below. Stained glass windows glinted dully, their colors muted in the night. "Maybe King lives there," Tessa said, remembering the stories Mama used to read. Kings help people. "King give food?" Kaia asked, hope brightening her voice for the first time in days. "Maybe," Tessa nodded. "We ask nice." They moved toward the imposing building, their small boots leaving twin trails in the fresh snow. The wind howled around the corners, carrying the scent of something metallic and strange. Tessa's nose wrinkled at the unfamiliar smell, but hunger drove her forward. As they approached, something glinted in the snow, a flash of gold caught in the flickering streetlight. Tessa stopped, tugging her sister to a halt beside her. "What that?" Kaia asked, bending down to look. Tessa crouched, her knees sinking into the cold wetness. She brushed away the snow with her mitten, revealing a large ring. It was heavy and ornate, with strange symbols carved into the band and a deep red stone set in the center. The stone seemed to glow from within, pulsing like a tiny heart. "Pretty," Kaia breathed, reaching out to touch it. "Tika." "Careful," Tessa warned, but she too was drawn to the ring. It felt warm against her cold fingers when she picked it up, as if it had been recently worn. The weight of it surprised her. It was heavier than it looked, like the paperweight on Mama's desk that they weren't allowed to touch. "It King's?" Kaia asked, leaning close to examine the treasure. Tessa turned the ring over in her hands, feeling the smooth gold and the rough edges of the carvings. "Must be. Very fancy." "We give back," Kaia decided with the simple logic of a 4-year-old. "Then he thank us. Give cookies." The thought of cookies made Tessa's empty stomach clench painfully. She nodded, closing her small fist around the ring. It warmed her palm, sending tingles up her arm. For a moment, she thought she heard a whisper, like someone calling from very far away. But when she looked around, there was only Kaia and the falling snow. "Come on," she said, standing up and tucking the ring safely into her coat pocket. "We go to castle." The path to the towering structure grew steeper, each step more difficult than the last. Tessa's legs trembled with exhaustion, and beside her, Kaia stumbled, nearly falling face first into a snowdrift. Tessa caught her sister's arm, steadying her, though her own balance wavered. "Too far," Kaia whimpered, tears freezing on her cheeks. "Too cold, Tessa." The ring in Tessa's pocket seemed to pulse, growing warmer against her thigh. She reached in, wrapping her fingers around it, drawing comfort from its strange heat. "Little more," she encouraged, though doubt gnawed at her. The castle-like building seemed no closer despite their trudging progress. A sudden gust of wind knocked them sideways, sending them both sprawling into the snow. The cold bit through Tessa's mittens as she pushed herself up, her palms burning with the chill. Kaia lay beside her, crying softly, her small body shaking with cold and hunger. "Up, Kai," Tessa urged, tugging at her sister's sleeve. "Can't sleep in snow," Mama said. "Mama," Kaia sobbed, the word breaking in the middle. "Want Mama." Tessa's throat tightened, making it hard to swallow. The vast emptiness of the night pressed down on her, the buildings looming like giants ready to topple. She felt tiny, insignificant, a speck in the endless white. For a moment, she wanted to lie down beside her sister, to close her eyes and let the snow cover them both. The ring pulsed again, almost burning now. Tessa pulled it from her pocket, staring at the red stone. It glowed brighter than before, casting a crimson light over the snow. As she watched, the stone seemed to swirl with movement, like liquid trapped in glass. "Magic ring," she whispered, awe momentarily overcoming her fear. Kaia's sobs quieted as she too stared at the glowing stone. "Pretty," she murmured, reaching out to touch it with one small finger. As both girls touched the ring, a strange sensation washed over them, a warmth that started in their fingertips and spread through their bodies, chasing away the worst of the cold. The hunger remained, a hollow ache in their bellies, but the desperate weakness receded slightly. "It helping us," Tessa said, clutching the ring tighter. "Magic helping." With renewed determination, she helped Kaia to her feet. The castle structure was still distant, but now a faint path seemed visible in the snow, leading directly to its massive doors. Whether the path had always been there, or had somehow appeared with the ring's glow, Tessa couldn't tell. They followed the path, stumbling occasionally, but always moving forward. The buildings around them grew older, more ornate, with gargoyles and strange faces carved into the stonework. Eyes seemed to follow their progress. Stone eyes, glass eyes from darkened windows, and once, Tessa was certain, real eyes gleaming from an alleyway, too high up to belong to a person. A new obstacle appeared, a wrought iron fence surrounding the castle grounds, its spikes topped with sharp finials that resembled spearheads. The gate stood twice as tall as an adult, its bars thick and imposing. A heavy chain wrapped around the middle, secured with a padlock larger than Tessa's head. "Can't get in," Kaia said, her shoulders slumping in defeat. Tessa approached the gate, the ring growing hotter in her hand. As she neared the iron bars, the padlock clicked, and the chain slithered to the ground like a metal snake. The gate swung open a few inches with a low, mournful creak. "Ring did it," Tessa breathed, looking down at the glowing stone. "It wants us go in." Kaia hung back, clutching the edge of Tessa's coat. "Scary," she whispered. It was scary. The courtyard beyond the gate lay in deep shadow, with strange statues visible through the falling snow. Figures frozen in poses of terror or supplication. The path continued, now made of cobblestones slick with ice, leading to a massive set of doors at the base of the towering structure. "But we hungry," Tessa reminded her sister, "and cold. And Ring wants help us." After a moment's hesitation, Kaia nodded. Hand in hand, they squeezed through the gap in the gate and entered the courtyard. The gate swung shut behind them with a clang that made them both jump and spin around. For a terrible moment, Tessa thought they were trapped, but when she touched the bars with her free hand, they moved easily. "We can go out," she reassured Kaia, though her own heart raced. "But first we ask King for help." The courtyard stretched before them, vast and silent save for the soft hiss of falling snow. Stone figures emerged from the whiteness as they approached, not gargoyles as Tessa had first thought, but statues of people. Their faces were twisted in expressions of fear, hands raised as if to ward off some unseen threat. Snow gathered in the hollow of a stone woman's open mouth, in the cupped palms of a kneeling man. "Don't like them," Kaia whispered, pressing closer to Tessa's side. They look scared. Tessa nodded, keeping her eyes fixed on the path ahead. The ring pulsed in her hand, its warmth spreading up her arm, fighting back the chill that had settled into her bones. Each breath formed a cloud before her face, hanging in the still air before dissipating. The massive doors of the castle loomed closer with each step. They were made of dark wood, reinforced with bands of black metal. Intricate carvings covered their surface, scenes that Tessa couldn't quite make out in the darkness, but which seemed to writhe and move when viewed from the corner of her eye. At the center of the right-hand door hung a knocker, a heavy bronze ring clutched in the jaws of a snarling beast. The creature's eyes seemed to follow them as they approached, though Tessa told herself it was just a trick of the light. "We knock?" Kaia asked, her voice barely audible. Tessa nodded, tucking the glowing ring carefully back into her pocket. She reached for the knocker, standing on tiptoe, but it remained just beyond her grasp. The door was made for someone much taller, a giant from the stories Mama told, not a small girl barely 4 years old. "Help me," she said to Kaia, who looked doubtfully at the snarling beast. Together they pushed a small mound of snow against the door, packing it down to form a makeshift step. Tessa climbed up, wobbling slightly, and reached again for the knocker. Her fingers brushed the cold metal, but couldn't quite get a grip. "Higher," she muttered, stretching until her shoulder ached. Kaia pressed against her legs, trying to steady her. "Careful, Tessa." With a final stretch, Tessa managed to hook her fingers through the ring. It was heavier than she expected, requiring both hands to lift. The beast's metal eyes seemed to watch her, its frozen snarl inches from her small fingers. She pulled the knocker back and let it fall. The sound that echoed through the courtyard was not the expected clang of metal on wood, but a deep, resonant boom that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Snow shook loose from the statues, revealing more of their terrified faces. The twins clung to each other, suddenly afraid of what they had summoned. "Maybe we go," Kaia whispered, tugging at Tessa's coat. "Find different help." Before Tessa could answer, a change came over the courtyard. The falling snow slowed, then stopped, hanging suspended in the air like tiny stars. The silence deepened, pressing against their ears. Even the distant city sounds faded to nothing. The ring in Tessa's pocket burned hot, almost too hot to bear. She pulled it out with a small cry, nearly dropping it into the snow. The red stone pulsed rapidly now, its glow illuminating their faces with crimson light. A sound came from behind the door, not footsteps, but a whisper of movement, like silk sliding over stone. The massive hinges groaned, and a crack appeared between the doors, widening slowly to reveal absolute darkness beyond. Tessa clutched Kaia's hand, the ring still burning in her other palm. They should run, she knew. They should turn and flee back through the iron gate, back to their cardboard shelter. But hunger and cold and desperation kept them rooted to the spot, staring into the darkness. A figure appeared in the doorway, tall and still, backlit by a faint red glow that matched the pulsing of the ring. Tessa had to tilt her head back to see its face, pale as the snow, with eyes that gleamed like polished stones. Not a king as she had imagined, with a crown and kind smile, but something else entirely. "You have something of mine, little ones?" the figure said, its voice soft yet carrying clearly through the frozen air. Long fingers extended toward them, palm upward in expectation. The ring in Tessa's hand gave one final, violent pulse, then went dark. Tessa couldn't move. couldn't breathe. The tall figure loomed over them, his shadow stretching across the snow like spilled ink. She wanted to run, but her legs wouldn't listen. The ring sat cold and lifeless in her palm now, all its magic gone. "Please," she whispered, her voice tiny in the vast silence. "We didn't mean to take it. We found it." The figure stepped forward into the moonlight. His face was beautiful and terrible at once, like the marble angels in the churchyard where they sometimes slept. His eyes weren't normal eyes at all. They were deep red, the color of the stone in the ring. "Children," he said, the word falling from his lips as if he'd never spoken it before. He tilted his head, studying them with those strange eyes. "Human children." Kaia pressed against Tessa's side, shivering not just from cold now. "We can give it back," she said, her voice wobbling. "We didn't know it was yours." The tall man's gaze moved between them, his expression shifting from stern to puzzled. He knelt down, still towering over them, but less frightening somehow. The snow beneath his knees didn't melt. Tessa noticed his clothes were old-fashioned, like from the storybooks Mommy used to read. A black jacket with silver buttons and a high collar. "How did you come by my signet?" he asked, his voice softer now. "That gate does not open to just anyone." Tessa held out her hand, the ring sitting small and ordinary-looking on her palm. "The Snow Lady showed us. She said a king lived here who could help." His eyebrows rose slightly. "Snow Lady. She was pretty," Kaia added, finding her voice. "She had white hair and blue lips. She said we should come here." The man's face changed, understanding dawning in those strange eyes. "Ah, the Winter Lady has sent me guests." He glanced at the ring, then back at their faces. "And what help do you seek from Julian Vane, little ones?" Tessa swallowed hard. This was their chance. "Our mommy is sick, really sick. We need magic to make her better." "Magic?" A faint smile touched his lips. Not unkind, but not quite warm either. "And you thought to find that here?" "The Snow Lady said," Kaia insisted. "She said you were powerful." Julian Vane studied them for a long moment. The wind picked up, sending swirls of snow dancing around them. Tessa's teeth chattered, and she tried to hide it, afraid he might send them away. "You're freezing," he said finally. "Come inside. We will speak further where it's warm." He stood in one fluid motion and turned toward the open doors. When they hesitated, he looked back, extending his hand. "I will not harm you. You have my word." Tessa looked at Kaia, a silent question passing between them. They had nowhere else to go. Mommy was getting worse every day. This might be their only chance. Tessa took a step forward, then another. Kaia followed, their joined hands swinging between them. They didn't take Julian's outstretched hand, but they followed him through the massive doors into a cavernous entrance hall. The doors swung shut behind them with a sound like thunder. Tessa jumped, squeezing Kaia's hand tighter. Inside, the mansion was both grand and decaying. Marble floors stretched out beneath their feet, cracked in places but still beautiful. A sweeping staircase curved upward, its banister gleaming dully in the light from iron chandeliers that hung from the vaulted ceiling. The air smelled of dust and something else, something sweet and metallic that Tessa couldn't name. "This way," Julian said, leading them across the hall to a smaller door. "The main rooms haven't been used in some time." They followed him down a narrow corridor lined with paintings in heavy frames. The people in the paintings seemed to watch them pass, their eyes following their progress. Tessa tried not to look at them. The corridor opened into a room that glowed with warmth and light. A fire crackled in a fireplace big enough for both girls to stand in. Thick rugs covered the floor, and heavy curtains hung at the windows, keeping out the night. "Sit," Julian said, gesturing to a pair of armchairs near the fire. They looked impossibly big, made for grown-ups much larger than Mommy. Tessa and Kaia climbed up together into one chair, their legs dangling above the floor. The chair smelled of leather and wood polish and something else, something like the air after lightning strikes. Julian watched them with that same puzzled expression. "How old are you?" "4," they answered together. His eyes widened slightly. "4 years? And you came here alone?" Tessa nodded. "Mommy couldn't come. She's too sick to get out of bed." "And where is your father?" Kaia shrugged. "Don't have one." Julian paced before the fire, his shadow dancing giant-like on the walls. "What is your mother's illness?" "She coughs a lot," Tessa said. "And she's hot, but she shivers, and she sleeps all the time now." "She can't eat," Kaia added. "We tried to make her soup, but she couldn't swallow it." Julian stopped pacing. "And you? When did you last eat?" The girls exchanged glances. "Yesterday," Tessa said. "We had half a sandwich from the nice lady at the coffee shop." Something flickered across Julian's face. Anger, maybe, but not at them. He moved to a bell pull by the fireplace and tugged it sharply. The sound of the bell echoed somewhere deep in the house. Minutes later, the door opened, and a woman entered. She was pale like Julian, but not as tall, with dark hair pulled back severely from her face. She wore a simple black dress with a white collar. "Eliza," Julian said, "our guests need food, and clean clothes, and a bath, I think." The woman, Eliza, looked at the twins with undisguised surprise. "Human children, my lord?" "Yes. See to their needs. They are under my protection." Eliza bowed slightly. "As you wish." She turned to the girls with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Come with me, little ones. We'll get you cleaned up while the kitchen prepares something to eat." Tessa didn't want to leave the warm room or Julian, strange as he was. At least they knew what to expect from him. But Kaia was already sliding down from the chair, pulled by the promise of food. "Will you still be here when we come back?" Tessa asked Julian, clutching the ring tightly. He nodded, holding out his hand. "Your token has served its purpose. I'll keep it safe for you." Reluctantly, Tessa placed the ring in his palm. His skin was cool to the touch, not warm like Mommy's, or even the normal cold of their own chilled fingers, but something different altogether. "Go with Eliza," he said gently. "I'll be waiting." They followed Eliza through more corridors and up a narrow staircase to a room with a large copper bathtub. Steam rose from the water, and the smell of roses filled the air. "In you go," Eliza said, helping them out of their dirty clothes. She made a small sound of distress when she saw how thin they were, ribs visible beneath their pale skin. The bath was the most wonderful thing Tessa had ever felt. The water was perfectly warm, and Eliza washed their hair with something that smelled like flowers. Kaia splashed happily, color returning to her cheeks for the first time in days. "Where are you from, children?" Eliza asked as she dried them with fluffy towels. "The city," Tessa said vaguely, not wanting to say too much. Eliza helped them into clean clothes, soft nightgowns that fell to their ankles, thick socks, and small robes made of some velvety material. The clothes were old-fashioned, like something from a storybook, but they were warm and clean. "Better," Eliza said, brushing Kaia's hair. "Now for some food." She led them to a different room, smaller than the one where they'd left Julian, but still grand by their standards. A table was set with silver dishes covered with domed lids. The smell made Tessa's stomach growl loudly. Eliza lifted the lids to reveal roasted meat, vegetables glazed with honey, fresh bread, and a bowl of fruit. It was more food than they'd seen in months. "Eat," she said, helping them into chairs piled with cushions so they could reach the table. Tessa stared at the feast, overwhelmed. Kaia reached for a grape, then hesitated, looking at Eliza for permission. "Go on," Eliza encouraged. "It's all for you." Kaia popped the grape into her mouth, her eyes widening at the sweetness. Tessa broke off a piece of bread, its crust crackling between her fingers. The first bite nearly made her cry. It was still warm from the oven, soft inside with a perfect crust. "Just bread, please," she said quietly. "Our tummies aren't used to rich food. Mommy always says to be careful after not eating for a while." Something like respect flickered in Eliza's eyes. "Your mother taught you well." She took away the richer dishes, leaving the bread, some mild cheese, and the fruit. Small bites, chew thoroughly. They ate slowly, savoring each mouthful. Tessa felt warmth spreading through her body, a heaviness in her limbs that wasn't unpleasant. For the first time in days, the gnawing emptiness in her stomach eased. When they finished, Eliza led them back to the room where Julian waited. He stood by the window, looking out at the night, but turned when they entered. "Better," he said, echoing Eliza's earlier assessment. "You may go, Eliza. I'll call if we need anything else." Eliza bowed again and left, closing the door softly behind her. Julian gestured to the chairs by the fire. "Sit. We have much to discuss." They climbed back into the same chair, huddling together out of habit. The food and warmth made Tessa drowsy, but she fought against it. They needed to convince Julian to help Mommy. "You said your mother is ill," Julian began, sitting opposite them. "Where is she now?" "In our room," Kaia said. "At the Starlight Motel." Julian frowned. "A motel? Not a hospital?" Tessa shook her head. "We can't go to hospitals. They'll take us away from Mommy." "Why would they do that?" Tessa bit her lip, not sure how much to say. "Mommy says it's complicated. She says we're special and some people wouldn't understand." Julian leaned forward, his red eyes intent. "Special how?" Kaia answered before Tessa could stop her. "We can do things, like make lights flicker, and sometimes we know things before they happen." Julian went very still. "You have power? Both of you?" They nodded together. "Show me," he said softly. Tessa looked at Kaia, who gave a tiny nod. They joined hands, focusing on the candle that burned on the table beside them. The flame stretched upward, growing brighter, then split into two flames that danced and twined around each other. Julian watched, his face unreadable. "Remarkable," he murmured as the flames settled back into a single point of light. "And your mother? Does she share this gift?" "No," Tessa said. "Just us. But she protects you, keeps you hidden." "She tries," Kaia said, her voice small. "But she's so sick now." Julian stood abruptly, pacing again. "This changes matters considerably." He stopped, looking down at them. "I will help your mother. But first, you must take me to her." Hope bloomed in Tessa's chest, warm and fragile. "You can make her better?" "Perhaps. I must see her condition for myself." "Now?" Kaia asked, yawning despite her excitement. Julian glanced at the ornate clock on the mantel. "It's very late. You need rest. We'll go at first light." "Promise?" Tessa pressed. afraid he might change his mind. Julian placed his hand over his heart, a formal gesture that seemed to belong to another time. "You have my word, Tessa Vance." Tessa blinked in surprise. "How do you know our last name?" A slight smile touched his lips. "I know many things, including that you and your sister are more important than you realize." He pulled a velvet cord by the fireplace. "Eliza will show you to a room where you can sleep. In the morning, we'll go to your mother." Eliza appeared so quickly that Tessa wondered if she'd been waiting outside the door. Julian gave her instructions in a low voice, too quiet for the twins to hear. "Come, children," Eliza said. "You need sleep." Tessa didn't want to leave Julian again, but exhaustion was pulling at her eyelids. She slid down from the chair, pulling Kaia with her. "Good night, Julian," she said, testing his name on her tongue. "Sleep well, little ones," he replied. "You're safe here." Eliza led them to a bedroom with a massive 4-poster bed draped in blue velvet. The sheets were turned down, revealing linens so white they seemed to glow in the lamplight. Tessa had never seen such a beautiful room. "Up you go," Eliza said, helping them climb onto the high bed. The mattress was soft, but not too soft, and the pillows cradled their heads perfectly. Eliza tucked the blankets around them. "Sleep now. His lordship will see to everything in the morning." She dimmed the lamp and left, closing the door with a soft click. Kaia snuggled close to Tessa, their foreheads touching. "Do you think he can really help, Mommy?" she whispered. "I hope so," Tessa whispered back. "He seems magical, doesn't he?" But scary too." "A little, but the Snow Lady wouldn't have sent us to someone bad." Kaia yawned again. "I like the bread here." "Me too." Tessa stroked her sister's hair, the way Mommy did when they were falling asleep. "Tomorrow we'll take Julian to Mommy, and everything will be okay." Kaia's breathing deepened, her body growing heavy with sleep. Tessa fought to stay awake a little longer, listening to the strange creaks and sighs of the grand old house. It didn't sound like the motel, with its thin walls and constant noise. This place was quieter, but somehow more alive, as if the house itself was breathing around them. Eventually, exhaustion won. Tessa drifted into sleep, her dreams filled with snow ladies and red-eyed kings and magic that could heal anything. Morning came too soon, gray light filtering through heavy curtains. Tessa woke to find clean clothes laid out for them, simple dresses of warm wool, thick stockings, and sturdy boots. Their old clothes were nowhere to be seen. Eliza helped them dress and brought a breakfast of porridge with honey and more of the wonderful bread. They ate quickly, eager to return to Mommy. Julian was waiting in the entrance hall, dressed in modern clothes now, a long black coat over a dark suit. He looked less otherworldly in the daylight, but no less imposing. "Ready?" he asked, his voice gentle. They nodded, taking his offered hands without hesitation now. His fingers were cool around theirs, strong and reassuring. Outside, a sleek black car waited in the circular drive. Tessa had expected to walk back through the snow, retracing their path from the night before. The car was an unexpected luxury. "I don't have car seats," Julian said, helping them into the back. "So you must sit very still and hold on to the straps." The drive into the city took less time than their journey out had taken on foot. Tessa watched the buildings grow denser, the streets more crowded. Julian drove with confident precision, his eyes flicking occasionally to the rearview mirror to check on them. "Which way?" he asked as they entered the part of the city they knew. "Left at the next light," Kaia directed, "then right at the gas station." The Starlight Motel looked even shabbier in daylight, its neon sign unlit and several letters missing. Julian's expression darkened as he parked the car. "This is where you live?" "Just for now," Tessa said defensively. "We move around a lot." Julian's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more as they led him to room 14 at the end of the row. Tessa used the key they'd hidden under a loose brick, turning it carefully in the lock. The smell hit them first, sickness and sweat and something worse underneath. The room was dim, curtains drawn against the morning light. A single bed took up most of the space. A thin figure huddled beneath the blankets. "Mommy?" Kaia called softly. "We brought help." The figure stirred, a pale face turning toward them. Cora Vance's eyes were fever-bright, her cheeks flushed against skin that was otherwise ashen. Her dark hair lay damp against her forehead. "Babies?" she whispered, her voice a dry rasp. "Where did you go? I was so worried." Tessa rushed to the bed, taking her mother's hot hand. "We found someone to help you, Mommy. This is Julian." Cora's gaze shifted to the tall figure standing in the doorway. Her eyes widened, fear replacing confusion. "No," she gasped. "Not here." "How did you find us?" Julian stepped forward, his expression grave. "Your daughters came to me, Cora Vance. They braved the night and the cold to seek help for you. You know my name," she whispered. "What are you?" "I think you already know," Julian said quietly. "The question is, what are your daughters, and why have you been hiding them?" Cora struggled to sit up, her thin arms shaking with the effort. "Please," she begged. "They're just children, innocent." "Yes," Julian agreed. "Innocent children with remarkable gifts. Gifts that should have been impossible." Tessa looked between them, confusion growing. "You know each other?" "No," Cora said quickly, "but I know what he is." She turned desperate eyes to Julian. "I've kept them safe, hidden them from those who would use them." "Including my kind?" Julian asked. Cora nodded weakly. "Especially your kind." Julian moved closer to the bed, his movements deliberately slow. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward her. After a moment's hesitation, Cora nodded again. Julian placed his cool hand on her forehead, then gently turned her face to examine her neck. His expression grew grimmer. "How long have you been ill?" "Weeks," she admitted. "It started as a cold, but—" "This is no cold," Julian said. "You've been marked." Tessa tugged at his sleeve. "Can you fix her? With magic?" Julian looked down at her, his red eyes softening. "This requires more than simple magic, little one." He turned back to Cora. "Who did this to you?" "I don't know," Cora whispered. "I never saw them. I just felt something in the night. I thought it was a dream." Julian's mouth tightened into a hard line. "The council," he said, almost to himself. "They found you, but not the children. They're using you as bait." "What's happening?" Kaia demanded, her small voice rising. "What's wrong with Mommy?" Julian knelt down to their level, his face grave. "Your mother has been poisoned, in a way, by creatures like me. They've taken something from her and left something harmful behind." "Vampires," Tessa breathed, the word from storybooks suddenly real and terrifying. Julian nodded once. "Yes." "Can you make her better?" Kaia pressed. "Not here," Julian said. "We need to take her somewhere safe. My home." "No," Cora protested weakly. "The girls will come too, of course," Julian assured her. "All of you will be under my protection." "Why?" Cora asked, suspicion clear despite her weakness. "Why would you help us?" Julian glanced at the twins, then back to Cora. Because your daughters came to me with courage and trust. Because they offered me back something that was mine, asking nothing for themselves, only help for you. He paused. And because I believe they may be the fulfillment of a very old prophecy, one that concerns me directly. What prophecy? Tessa asked. Julian shook his head. Later. First, we must get your mother to safety. He lifted Cora easily, blankets and all, cradling her against his chest, as if she weighed nothing. She was so thin, so diminished from the strong mother Tessa remembered, that tears pricked at her eyes. Gather anything important, Julian instructed them. We won't be coming back. The twins moved quickly, stuffing their few treasures into a tattered backpack. Mommy's photo album, their shared stuffed bear, the smooth stone they'd found by the river last summer. There wasn't much else worth taking. Julian carried Cora to the car, settling her gently in the front seat. The twins climbed into the back, clutching their backpack between them. As Julian started the engine, a sleek silver car pulled into the motel parking lot, stopping directly behind them. 3 figures emerged, 2 men and a woman, all pale and elegant like Julian, but with a coldness to their beauty that made Tessa shiver. The council, Julian said, his voice tight. Hold on. He threw the car into reverse, then swerved sharply, narrowly missing the silver car. The engine roared as they accelerated onto the street. Tessa looked back through the rear window. The 3 figures stood watching, making no move to follow. The woman raised her hand in a gesture that might have been a wave or a warning. They're not chasing us, Kaia said. They don't need to, Julian replied grimly. They know where we're going. Cora stirred in the front seat, her eyes fluttering open. The girls, she murmured. Keep them safe. I will, Julian promised. Rest now. The drive back to the mansion seemed to take forever. Tessa watched her mother anxiously, counting each shallow breath. Beside her, Kaia clutched the backpack, her knuckles white. When they finally reached the iron gates, Julian didn't slow down. He pressed a button on the dashboard, and the gates swung open just in time for them to pass through. They slammed shut immediately after, the sound of metal striking metal echoing across the snowy grounds. Julian carried Cora inside, the twins following close behind. He didn't stop in any of the rooms they'd seen before, but continued up the grand staircase and down a long hallway to a tower room with windows on all sides. He laid Cora gently on a bed draped in crimson silk. Her breathing had grown more labored during the journey, her skin now waxy and gray. What are you going to do? Tessa asked, clinging to the edge of the bed. Julian looked at her, his expression solemn. Something dangerous, something that might not work. He knelt beside the bed, taking her small hands in his. I need you to trust me, Tessa. You and Kaia both. We do, Kaia said, joining them. You're going to save Mommy. Julian closed his eyes briefly. I will try, but you must understand. What's been done to her is meant to kill. Slowly, painfully. It's a trap designed to draw me out. Why you? Tessa asked. Because of who I am. What I am. Julian stood, moving to a cabinet across the room. I am not just any vampire, Tessa. I am the Vampire King, the last of the original bloodline. He returned with a small silver knife and a crystal goblet. The council, those people you saw at the motel, they want me gone. They've wanted that for centuries. Why? Kaia asked. Because I enforce the old laws. Laws that protect humans from the worst of our kind. Julian rolled up his sleeve. Laws that some find inconvenient. Without warning, he drew the knife across his wrist. Dark blood, darker than human blood, almost black, welled up and dripped into the goblet. "What are you doing?" Tessa gasped. "Giving your mother the only cure there is for vampire poison," Julian said calmly. "My blood contains the original power. It can heal what's been done to her." When the goblet was half full, Julian pressed his thumb to the cut. It sealed instantly, not even a scar remaining. He moved to Cora's side, lifting her head gently. "She needs to drink," he said. "All of it." Tessa nodded, understanding somehow that this was right, that this was the magic they had sought. "Mommy," she called, patting Cora's cheek. "Wake up! You need to drink the medicine." Cora's eyes opened, unfocused and confused. "Tess!" "Drink, Mommy," Kaia urged. "It will make you better." Julian held the goblet to Cora's lips. She drank reflexively at first, then with growing strength, draining the goblet completely. When she finished, Julian laid her head back on the pillow. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Cora's body went rigid, her back arching off the bed. A scream tore from her throat, raw and agonized. "Mommy!" the twins cried together, reaching for her. Julian held them back. "Don't touch her. The poison is being drawn out." They watched in horror as Cora convulsed, black lines appearing beneath her skin like dark rivers. Her screams gave way to choking sounds as a thick, tar-like substance bubbled from her mouth and nose. Julian moved quickly, wiping away the foul liquid with a cloth that he immediately threw into the fireplace. The cloth burst into blue flames, consumed in seconds. Gradually, Cora's convulsions subsided. The black lines faded, and color returned to her cheeks. Her breathing deepened and steadied. "Is she better now?" Tessa whispered, afraid to hope. Julian nodded, a tired smile touching his lips. "She's healing. She'll sleep for some time, but when she wakes, she'll be stronger than she's been in weeks." Relief flooded through Tessa, making her knees weak. Kaia was already crying, silent tears of joy tracking down her cheeks. "Thank you," Tessa said, the words inadequate for what she felt. "Thank you for saving our mommy." Julian touched her cheek gently. "You saved her, Tessa. You and Kaia. Your courage brought you to me." A commotion from downstairs interrupted the moment. Shouting, the sound of breaking glass, heavy footsteps on the stairs. Julian's expression hardened. "They're here, sooner than I expected." He moved to the door, locking it with a heavy key. "Stay with your mother. Do not open this door for anyone but me." "Who's here?" Kaia asked, fear replacing joy in her voice. The council," Julian said grimly. "They've come for what they believe is theirs." "Us?" Tessa guessed, suddenly understanding. Julian nodded once. "They've suspected for years that a prophecy was coming to fruition. Twin girls born with natural power, destined to change the balance between our kinds." He touched each of their heads in turn, a gesture of blessing or protection. "I didn't believe it myself until I saw what you could do with the candle flame. Such power in one so young. It should be impossible." More crashes came from below, closer now. "I must go," Julian said. "Remember, stay here. Stay quiet." He slipped through the door, locking it again from the outside. His footsteps receded quickly down the hall. Tessa and Kaia climbed onto the bed, huddling on either side of their sleeping mother. They could hear shouting now, Julian's voice raised in anger, other voices responding with equal fury. "What do we do?" Kaia whispered. Tessa took her hand across their mother's body. "We wait. Julian will protect us." The shouting grew louder, then abruptly stopped. An eerie silence fell over the house, broken only by the sound of footsteps on the stairs again. Lighter this time, more numerous. A key turned in the lock. The door swung open to reveal the three figures from the motel, the council. The woman stepped forward, her beauty terrible in its perfection. "There you are," she said, her voice musical and cold. "The prophecy twins. How convenient to find you all together." Behind her, the two men moved into the room. One went to the window, drawing the curtains. The other approached the bed. "Don't touch our mommy," Tessa warned, trying to sound brave. The woman laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "Oh, we're not interested in your mother, child. It's you we've come for, you and your sister." "Where's Julian?" Kaia demanded. The woman's smile widened, showing teeth too sharp to be human. "Indisposed, I'm afraid. He put up quite a fight, but even kings fall eventually." "You're lying," Tessa said. "He's stronger than you." "Perhaps once," the woman conceded. "But not today." She nodded to her companions. "Take the mother. The children will follow." The men moved with inhuman speed, lifting Cora from between the twins before they could react. She didn't wake, still deep in the healing sleep. "No!" Tessa screamed, lunging after them. "Bring her back!" The woman caught her easily, her grip painfully tight on Tessa's arm. "Behave, child, or your mother suffers." Kaia scrambled across the bed, her face contorted with rage and fear. "Let her go! Let mommy go!" The men were already at the door, Cora hanging limp between them. The woman backed away, still holding Tessa. "Come along quietly, and no one gets hurt. Resist, and—" She shrugged elegantly. "Well, your mother is still very fragile." Tessa looked at Kaia, desperation in her eyes. They had no choice. They couldn't fight these creatures, couldn't risk mommy getting hurt again. As the woman dragged her toward the door, Tessa took a deep breath and screamed with all her might, not just with her voice, but with something deeper, something that came from the same place as their power. "Julian! Help us!" Kaia joined her, their voices blending into a single cry that seemed to shake the very stones of the tower. "Julian!" The woman hissed in pain, releasing Tessa to cover her ears. The men stumbled, nearly dropping Cora. The windows rattled in their frames, and dust sifted down from the ceiling. "Enough!" the woman snarled, recovering quickly. She grabbed both twins now, one in each hand. "You'll pay for that, little witches." She dragged them from the room, following the men who carried Cora. Down the stairs they went, through the grand entrance hall where furniture lay broken and scattered, signs of the fight that had taken place. There was no sign of Julian. The front doors stood open to the night. Snow swirled in, settling on the marble floor. The silver car waited in the drive, its engine running. "Julian!" The twins screamed again as they were pulled across the threshold, their voices echoing across the snowy grounds. "Julian!" The night air bit into Tessa's skin as the woman dragged them across the snow-covered driveway. Her feet barely touched the ground, kicking uselessly as tears streaked down her face. Beside her, Kaia struggled too, both of them watching helplessly as the men carried mommy toward the waiting car. "Stop your squirming," the woman hissed, her fingers digging painfully into Tessa's arm. A distant sound made everyone pause, something between a roar and a scream echoing through the night. The woman's grip tightened. "Get them in the car, now!" she ordered, suddenly urgent. One of the men opened the car door, while the other shoved Cora inside. The woman started pulling the twins faster, their little feet slipping on the icy ground. The roar came again, closer this time. The woman's head snapped up, her eyes widening as she stared at something beyond the trees. "Choo, he's coming," she whispered, and for the first time, Tessa heard fear in her voice. The air around them seemed to thicken, pressing down like a heavy blanket. The snow stopped falling mid-air, suspended as if time itself had paused. An unnatural silence fell over the grounds, broken only by the harsh breathing of the council members. Then the darkness between the trees moved. Julian stepped out of the shadows, but he wasn't the Julian they knew. This Julian was taller, his shoulders broader, his skin so pale it seemed to glow in the moonlight. His eyes burned red like hot coals, and when he opened his mouth, Tessa saw fangs gleaming sharp and long. "Release them," he said, his voice deeper than thunder, seeming to come from everywhere at once. The woman pushed the twins behind her. "This doesn't concern you, Julian. The council has made its decision." Julian took another step forward. The snow beneath his feet turned to water, then steam, rising in wisps around him. "I won't ask again." "You have no authority here," one of the men called out, trying to sound brave though his voice shook. "You abandoned your throne. You're nothing now." Julian's laugh was like ice cracking. "Nothing." His form seemed to blur at the edges, darkness swirling around him like smoke. "I am the king of the night. I have walked this earth for 1,000 years. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have feasted on the blood of kings." He moved so fast that Tessa barely saw it. One moment he stood at the edge of the trees. The next he was beside the car, holding one of the men by the throat. "And you think I am nothing?" The man clawed at Julian's hand, his feet dangling above the ground. Julian's fingers tightened, and there was a sickening crack. The man went limp, and Julian tossed him aside like a broken toy. The woman shoved the twins toward the car. "Get in, now!" Kaia grabbed Tessa's hand, both of them frozen in terror. Not of Julian, but of the council members whose faces had transformed, eyes glowing yellow, teeth elongating into fangs. The second man lunged at Julian, moving with inhuman speed. But Julian was faster. He caught the man's arm mid-strike and twisted. The sound of breaking bone cut through the night. The man screamed, falling to his knees, but Julian wasn't finished. He grabbed the man's hair, yanked his head back, and with one swift motion, tore out his throat. Blood sprayed across the snow, steaming in the cold air. The woman screamed, backing away, dragging the twins with her. "You can't do this," she shrieked. "The council will hunt you down. They'll destroy everything you love." Julian turned toward her, blood dripping from his hands. His eyes glowed brighter, and the air around him shimmered with heat. "Let them try." The woman shoved the twins away and transformed fully, her elegant features elongating into something feral and monstrous. She launched herself at Julian, claws extended, teeth bared. Julian met her attack head-on. They collided with such force that the ground shook. They moved too fast for Tessa to follow, becoming blurs of motion, snarling and tearing at each other. Blood spattered the snow. Whose? Tessa couldn't tell. "Mommy," Kaia whispered, tugging at Tessa's hand. They looked toward the car where their mother lay slumped in the back seat. They ran to her, slipping and sliding across the blood-stained snow. Tessa reached the car first, pulling open the door. Mommy looked so pale, so still. Tessa touched her face, and to her relief, Mommy's eyelids fluttered. "Tessa? Kaia?" Her voice was weak, confused. "We're here, Mommy," Kaia said, climbing into the car beside her. A terrible scream made them all flinch. Tessa turned to see Julian holding the woman by her throat, just as he had held the man. But this time, he didn't break her neck. Instead, he pulled her close as if to whisper in her ear. "Tell your counsel," he said, his voice carrying across the snow-covered grounds, "that the twins are under my protection. Tell them that if they ever come near my family again, I will tear down their precious council chambers stone by stone. I will hunt each of them to the ends of the earth. I will make them beg for death before I'm done." He released her, and she fell to her knees, gasping and clutching her throat. "You can't protect them forever," she rasped. Julian's smile was terrible to behold. "Watch me." The woman scrambled to her feet and ran, disappearing into the darkness beyond the trees. Julian stood motionless for a long moment, his breath coming in clouds of steam. Then, slowly, he turned toward the car where the twins and Cora waited. As he approached, Tessa could see that he was hurt. Deep gashes across his chest and arms, blood soaking through his torn clothes. His eyes still burned red, his face still twisted into something not quite human. Tessa should have been afraid, but all she felt was relief. Julian had come for them. Julian had saved them. He stopped a few feet from the car, swaying slightly. The red light in his eyes flickered, dimming for a moment before flaring brighter. He looked down at his blood-covered hands and took a step back. "Julian?" Tessa called, climbing out of the car. "Stay back," he growled, his voice still that deep, rumbling thunder. "I'm not safe right now," but Tessa didn't listen. She took a step toward him, then another. Behind her, she heard Kaia climbing out of the car, too. "You're hurt," Tessa said, reaching out a small hand. Julian flinched away. "Don't. Please, I can't control it. The hunger. After a fight like that." Tessa didn't understand what he meant, but she understood that he was afraid. Afraid of himself. Afraid of hurting them. She took another step closer. "Tessa, no," Julian pleaded, backing away. The red light in his eyes pulsed, and his fangs gleamed as he spoke. "I could hurt you. I could—" Tessa didn't let him finish. She ran the last few steps and wrapped her arms around his leg, pressing her face against his knee. She felt him stiffen, heard the sharp intake of his breath. "You won't hurt us," she said, her voice muffled against the fabric of his pants. "You're our Julian." For a moment, he stood frozen, every muscle tense. Then, slowly, she felt a hand on her head. Gentle, so gentle, despite the blood and the claws that still tipped his fingers. "Tessa," he whispered, and his voice sounded more like the Julian she knew. Kaia joined them, hugging his other leg. "You saved us," she said. Julian sank to his knees in the snow, bringing himself to their level. The red light in his eyes was fading, replaced by the familiar deep brown. His face was changing too, the monstrous features softening into the Julian they recognized. "I will always save you," he said, his voice breaking. Always. He gathered them into his arms, holding them close, his body shaking with silent sobs. Tessa wrapped her arms around his neck, feeling the steady thump of his heart against her chest. "You're bleeding," Kaia said, touching one of the gashes on his arm. Julian shook his head. "It's nothing. I heal quickly." And indeed, when Tessa looked again, the wound was already closing, the edges knitting together before her eyes. A soft sound from the car made them all turn. Cora was trying to sit up, her face pale but alert. "Mom," Julian said, rising to his feet with the twins still in his arms. He carried them to the car and set them down gently beside Cora. "Julian," Cora whispered, reaching for his hand. What happened? The council, they came for the girls. They won't bother us again, Julian said, his voice firm. I've made sure of it. Cora's eyes widened as she took in his appearance. The torn clothes, the blood, the lingering inhuman cast to his features. What did you do? What was necessary, he replied simply. What I should have done from the beginning. He helped Cora out of the car, supporting her as she swayed on her feet. Can you walk? She nodded, leaning heavily against him. I think so. Together, they made their way back to the tower, the twins walking ahead, holding hands. The snow had begun to fall again, covering the blood-stained ground with a fresh blanket of white. The bodies of the council members were already dissolving, turning to ash that mixed with the snow until there was no trace of them left. Inside, the tower was a mess, furniture overturned, windows broken, signs of the struggle everywhere. But it was still home. Julian settled Cora on the couch in the living room, then went to find blankets and pillows. Are you okay, Mommy? Tessa asked, climbing up beside her. Cora smiled weakly, brushing Tessa's hair back from her face. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just tired. The bad people wanted to take us away, Kaia said, joining them on the couch. But Julian stopped them, Tessa added. Cora's eyes filled with tears. Yes, he did. Julian returned with an armful of blankets and began tucking them around Cora and the twins. His movements were gentle, careful, as if he was afraid he might break them. What happens now? Cora asked quietly. Julian paused, looking down at the twins who were already beginning to doze, the excitement and fear of the night catching up with them. Now we rest, he said. Tomorrow we'll talk about what comes next. Will you stay? Cora's voice was barely a whisper. Julian met her eyes. If you'll have me. Cora reached for his hand, squeezing it weakly. We need you, Julian. All of us. He nodded, his throat working as he swallowed. Then I'll stay. He settled into an armchair across from the couch, watching over them as Cora's eyes drifted closed. The twins, however, weren't quite asleep. They exchanged a look, then slid off the couch and padded over to Julian. Can we sit with you? Tessa asked, already climbing onto his lap without waiting for an answer. Julian stiffened for a moment, then relaxed, making room for both of them. Of course, Kaia settled on his other knee, and the twins leaned against his chest, their small bodies warm against his. Julian wrapped his arms around them, holding them close. Are the bad people going to come back? Kaia asked, her voice small. Julian shook his head. No, I won't let them. Promise? Tessa looked up at him, her eyes serious. I promise, Julian said, and Tessa could feel the rumble of his voice in his chest. I'll protect you, always. Satisfied, the twins snuggled closer, their eyelids growing heavy. Julian began to hum softly, an old lullaby that seemed to fill the room with warmth. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the world in a blanket of white. The night was giving way to dawn, the first pale light of morning creeping through the broken windows. The red glow that had surrounded Julian during the fight was gone completely now, replaced by the soft, golden light of sunrise. Tessa felt safe, wrapped in Julian's arms with Kaia beside her. She knew, somehow, that everything would be all right now. Julian would keep them safe. Julian would stay. As sleep claimed her, Tessa heard Julian whisper, so softly she almost missed it. My little ones, my family. And in that moment, as the first rays of sunlight touched Julian's face, turning his skin from deathly pale to warm gold, Tessa knew that was exactly what they were. A family, strange and broken and not at all what anyone would expect, but a family nonetheless. The last thing she felt before sleep took her completely was Julian pressing a gentle kiss to the top of her head, his lips cool against her skin. And she smiled, knowing that when she woke, he would still be there, holding them close, keeping them safe. In the quiet of the dawn, with the twins asleep on his lap and Cora resting peacefully on the couch, Julian looked out at the snow-covered world beyond the windows. For the first time in centuries, he felt at peace. The monster inside him, the hunger that had driven him for so long, was quiet now, soothed by the presence of these three humans who had somehow become his world. He was trapped, pinned in place by the weight of two sleeping children.